Creating custom Pokemon for you! Welcome back, everyone, to the show where we select lucky commenters to spin a series of random wheels that give us factors for a Pokemon that we then create just for you. What's up, y'all? If you didn't see, my last video was actually an announcement for my fan-made Pokemon game, Pokemon Void, so make sure to go watch that if you haven't already. And because I'm working on a game, it actually makes this series a lot more exciting because any Pokemon you see today might eventually be catchable in that game, which is super hype to me. And of course, today we're gonna make 4 brand new custom Pokemon as always. But before we get started, I do have some quick reminders. First off, if you end up liking today's video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see the next one. And of course, if you want a custom Pokemon for yourself, all you have to do is leave a comment under this video because I'll be randomly selecting people from this video's comments for the next episode. That's right, everyone who gets a custom Pokemon is just randomly selected from the comments. It's just most fair that way, but it also makes it way more important to subscribe with the notification bell turned on, because if you get a custom Pokemon, you need to see the episode to even know that you got one. If you missed it, that would absolutely suck, so don't let it happen to you. Subscribe now. And without further ado, let's get into the first Pokemon. And this one will be for Turbo Tamari, who watched the entire series 3 times in 5 days. That has got to be a new record. So alright, Turbo, let's start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you're going to be a Convergent Evolution. Cool. And it means that now we have to spin this wheel to see what generation of Pokemon we're making a Convergent for, and it's Gen 1. We definitely get that one a lot, but it's a classic, so I'm not complaining. And now we'll spin this wheel that has every single Gen 1 Pokemon on it to see what we're working with, and we got Mew! That is absolutely insane. I'm pretty sure that is literally the craziest result we could have gotten on the entire wheel. The first mythical Pokemon ever, Mew, and we have to make a new version. Wish me luck. We're starting today off on an absolutely crazy note. And now let's see what new typing we'll be giving to this Convergent Mew. I'm actually pretty nervous for this wheel. Your first type is the normal type. That is surprisingly boring for how crazy this is. And normal cosmic. If you don't know, that's our fan-made type, but this is easily the weirdest prompt we've ever had so far. It's not even close. And the last step before we see which Pokemon looks like, let's see if it has an X Factor, and of course you do, an additional form. The hardest one to do. Things are about to get wacky. Get ready to meet one of the weirdest Pokemon of the entire series. Your Pokemon is Moo, the coincidence Pokemon. In the custom Pokemon region, these Pokemon are extremely common normal types that can be found roaming around in most grassy areas. However, you've no doubt noticed its uncanny resemblance to the mythical Pokemon Mew, which can be found in the Kanto region. And this resemblance led to a crazy mix-up, when one day a group of advanced universe-exploring aliens started a search for Mew, who they had heard to be the first of all Pokemon. They even heard that simple humans were able to use Mew's DNA to create an incredibly powerful creature. And if stupid humans could do that, the aliens thought a creation of their own using Mew's DNA would be the strongest Pokemon to ever live. And upon landing on the surface, they couldn't believe their luck. Mew was right where they landed, just waiting to be captured. Now, of course, this was a simple Moo, not the real Mew, but that didn't stop the aliens from bringing it onto their ship and beginning their incredible cloning process. And using their advanced technology, of which the world has never seen, they took the DNA of Moo and created Mewtwo! Now, obviously, this Pokemon was created with the DNA of a much weaker creature than the original Mewtwo, so you'd think it'd be much weaker itself, but you'd be very wrong. Because the advanced technology of the aliens infused Mewtwo with so much cosmic energy that it's even able to manipulate the gravity around it, almost perfectly mimicking Mewtwo's psychic abilities, and in many ways surpassing it, making for the most confusing but utterly terrifying Pokemon of all time. In terms of stats, this Pokemon has very similar numbers to the original Mewtwo, with some very small differences. And for the shinies, of course we had to go with a reference to the original Mew and Mewtwo, because how could we not? This Pokemon was absolutely wacky. If you couldn't tell, it takes inspiration from the classic trope of aliens abducting cows. And honestly, this Pokemon is so goofy, I'm not even sure it can fit into the fan-made game, because how would it? It's just so random. But even if it doesn't, it was super fun to work on, definitely a good challenge. But now let's get into the second Pokemon. And this one will be for Vivian is Tired. Thanks for making the journey over from Instagram. So alright, Vivian, let's start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you are going to be regular. There's Nothing wrong with that. Now let's see how many times your Pokemon can evolve, and you are going to get 1, which makes you a 2-stage evolution line. Now let's see what typing your Pokemon's going to be. Your first type is going to be the Poison type. That's good. I think it's very rare in our region. And Poison Ground. That's cool. And the last step before we see which Pokemon looks like, let's see if it has an X Factor, and you do! A Mega Evolution, the best mechanic in Pokemon history. That is high. As you travel across the mini deserts in the custom region, you must remember to watch your step. Your Pokemon is Silisnare, the lion weight Pokemon. These Pokemon are very small, but their bodies contain a very potent poison capable of paralyzing creatures up to 50 times their size. And the main way this Pokemon hunts is laying right below the surface of the sand and waiting for unsuspecting prey to step on top of them. At which point they rocket their tail forward, and from there, it's over. At level 21, it would evolve into Snaramid. These Pokemon are shockingly fast, able to move across the surface of the sand with such ease, it almost looks like they're swimming. And when you combine this speed with its poison that's now even stronger, you get a truly terrifying Desert Menace. But thankfully, these Pokemon are also pretty rare because they can only be found near large pyramid structures which they seem to be protecting as they're constantly circling them, keeping away all would-be tomb robbers. When exposed to Snarite, it would evolve into Mega Snaramid. Upon Mega Evolution, this Pokemon developed an insanely sturdy coat of sandstone around its body, which is nearly impenetrable. However, this also came with a cost because all that extra weight made it super slow, with it now being forced to withstand enemy attacks until they become foolish enough to enter its attack range. In terms of stats, Snaramid is incredibly fast while also having pretty decent physical attack. And while its Mega Evolution is super slow, it does gain a giant boost to both of its defenses. And for the shiny, I went with this dark gray and red that I think looks absolutely sick. This might be my favorite shiny of the entire series. And what's also cool about this Pokemon is it goes along with our theme of mega evolving desert Pokemon. I think we have like 3 or 4 members of it already, which is super cool, especially if you've seen the lore behind the legendary Twiton. If you haven't, it's basically the origin of all Mega Evolutions, and it lives in the desert. So this is absolutely perfect. It's adding to the lore of the game, which I absolutely love. But now let's get into the third Pokemon. And this one will be for the ABCs. Welcome to the channel. So alright ABC, let's start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you are going to be regular. There's nothing wrong with that. Now let's see how many times your Pokemon can evolve, and you're going to get 2, which makes you a full 3-stage evolution line. Now let's see what typing your Pokemon's going to be. Your first type is going to be the Bug type. That is actually one of my favorite types to do for this series. They're always so fun. And Bug Fire, that's really cool. And the last step before we see what your Pokemon looks like, let's see if it has an X Factor, and it is going to be none this time. This creature is proof that Pokemon can survive in any environment. The first stage of your Pokemon is Moltot, the Molten Pokemon. These Pokemon can often be found near active volcanoes, feeding on the magma rock that forms near rivers of lava. And in order to handle this intense diet, their bodies are almost entirely made up of an incredibly hot liquid that breaks down the rocks before releasing excess heat out of the hole in its tail. At level 27, it would evolve into Larava. Most of the time, these Pokemon are very docile and can be found sleeping at the bottom of lava pools where it knows it can't be disturbed, with the only time they surface being to feed on their preferred diet of rock-type Pokemon, such as Roly-Poly, Boldore, and even Golem. That's right, this Pokemon eats rock-type, so it's safe to say this thing is Brock's worst nightmare. At level 47, it would evolve into Magmold, an absolute magma monstrosity that can only be found in the deepest parts of volcanic mountains, where they constantly feed on the hottest of materials found. It's even said they're able to consume an entire Steelix in less than a minute. And in battle, they're some of the most ferocious Pokemon in existence, constantly hurling their liquid magma body in all directions, spewing toxic fumes and obliterating all that it touches. In terms of stats, this Pokemon is a terrifying physical threat that's only held back by its low speed. And for the shiny, I went with this blue color because I am absolutely addicted to turning red Pokemon light blue for their shinies. It is a legitimate problem. Now, the inspiration for this Pokemon comes from larva, a state that many insects enter in the early stages of metamorphosis, and lava, which is only 1 letter off of larva, which I thought was perfect for a bug fire type. But now let's get into the 4th Pokemon. And this one will be for Jamie Hobson. I'm glad you like the Quincata line, but hopefully you like your own Pokemon even more. So alright, Jamie, let's start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you are going to be regular. There's nothing wrong wrong with that? Hey. Now let's see how many times your Pokemon can evolve, and you are going to get 0, which actually makes you a basic Pokemon. Now let's see what typing your Pokemon's going to be. Your first type is going to be not a type. It is none, so whatever this next type is, it's your only type. And it is the Cosmic type, our fan-made type again, but this one is pure Cosmic. That's interesting. And the last step, before we see what your Pokemon looks like, let's see if it has an X Factor, and you do, a corrupted form. I think this is actually the first Cosmic type with a corrupted form, so that's really cool. I don't know about you, but I think it's about time that our region gets its own evolution. Your Pokemon is Oblivion, the experiment Pokemon. In the distant past, when humans were first experimenting with space travel, there came a time to test if anything could survive being sent into orbit. And to test this, they looked for volunteers to be shot into space, but all of them were way too scared except for one brave Eevee, who would go on to be the first non-cosmic type Pokemon to gaze across the universe. And it's here floating among the stars where something strange happened. Eevee's reactive DNA was altered by the cosmic rays, transforming it into the first Oblivion. Now today, trainers just use an orbit stone to evolve Eevee, but back then, this was a big deal. So of course the scientists rushed to get Oblivion back onto Earth to study this new evolution. But this would prove to be a grave mistake, as somewhere along Oblivion's journey back, it was noticed by a distant, unknown cosmic legendary, who corrupted Oblivion, infusing it with the cosmic type and forcing it to rampage on Earth. And this was actually the first ever instance of a corrupted Pokemon. In terms of stats, Oblivion is very defensive and fast, which makes it a great support Pokemon. And for the shiny, I went with this very subtle purple and green color just because I thought it looked nice. And this Pokemon actually has a really cool inspiration. It's based off Laika, the very first dog sent into space. Now in the real life story, Laika did not return home, so I thought it'd be a cool reference to make this Pokemon also get sent into space, but with a much happier ending. Well, I guess it's not too happy because it got corrupted, but you know what I mean. But that's gonna do it for today's episode, y'all. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe before you go. And if you want to watch more episodes just like this one, there's a bunch in this playlist. Sorry this episode took so long to come out, but after making 100 straight episodes of custom Pokemon, I feel like my creativity needed a reset, so I took a break. But I'm right back to making them now, so I hope you stick around for another 100 episodes because they're on the way. And I've also been working on the fan-made game, so you should expect to see the very first progress update video coming out soon. So make sure you have that notification bell on so you don't miss when I post that, but until then, peace.